Lights and fireworks are visible throughout the kingdom to announce the important day. The people around the palace still do not stop shouting and praising Emperor Hippodium, who today should ascend to his rightful throne. There is silence in the room, and only the rustling of the dress makes a pleasant sound. One of the maids asks the mistress to stand up and spin around to examine her outfit from all sides. A man standing nearby, trying to intervene in the conversation, notices the fact that only the earrings have changed, which means there is no need to bother the hostess over such a trifle. This is not true, because today is the coronation ceremony, and therefore meticulousness in all details will not hurt. Out of nowhere, a brunette appears, and, with an angry expression on her face, asks the couple why they are arguing in the presence of the empress. The head maid is clearly not happy with this strange behavior. The blonde sitting near the dressing table coughs quietly to attract attention, and then assures that everything is fine. She wasn't so bothered by conversations, especially since she herself wants everything to go just fine. Anne was about to say something else, but he was interrupted by a knock on the door. The two loud noises are repeated just twice, and then Susan asks the person standing there to come in. The butler, a middle-aged man who entered the room, immediately bows in a respectful gesture. He did not want to interrupt his preparations, but he was ordered to convey that Lord Cartian would arrive soon. The lady turns towards the servants and nods in agreement. She says that she is already ready, which means she can go down. The earrings that have been replaced really complement the look, and the blonde hair sparkles as if it had just been polished. Mary comes closer to the table, standing next to her mistress. It's strange to think about the future, but one more year and very soon the lady will become an adult. This period of time seems too long for Anne. The guy, worriedly, but as if jokingly, says that the gentleman might get tired of waiting and simply faint, but his girlfriend assures him that this will not happen. The emperor is strong, so much so that many people chase after him without getting what they want. The girl slowly gets up from her chair, which causes the servants standing behind to back away and freeze in place. Their faces show fear because they did not expect such a sharp reaction, which, most likely, would be followed by something worse. The brunette, stuttering, says that she meant something else. The Lord was born to be a good man, so no one considers him a monster. The guy next to him nods in agreement, simultaneously asking for forgiveness for such insults directed at him. Smiling, the girl assures that everything is fine. She was not offended at all, especially since the couple did not say anything that could be contrary to all the regulations. The reaction occurred because of the thoughts in her head, because the blonde thought about how quickly time flies. The eyes seemed to light up with fire when remembering everything. So much has happened in a very short period of time that sometimes you have to force and convince yourself that it's all real. Such unpleasant memories pop up in your head that make you want to shrink. The man in armor, who is a knight, throws the girl to the ground and presses her head down to block her entire view. Turning her head a little, the girl tries to endure all the pain that is being caused to her, thereby hoping that it will all end soon. Tears accumulate in the eyes, and then slowly roll down the cheeks and nose. People around are shouting something. Some of them want the princess to be pardoned, and some, on the contrary, want to see her executed as quickly as possible. The emperor and his son are in the very front row for this spectacle. The brunette, as if he doesn't care, just squints his eyes a little, pretending that he doesn't notice anything, while the others turn away so as not to see what will happen next. Tears still freeze in the eyes, leaving wet marks. The pupils shrank, because the blonde was clearly scared. Horror creeps into every nerve of the body, making it clear that soon everything will end before it even begins. There is no strength at all, so the girl is unable to raise her head, continuing to kneel with her hands tied. The knight, who until recently was one step away from the person, steps back and swings his sword. The voices in my head fade away, while the voice of a servant, calling his mistress, pulls me out of my thoughts. Trying to shake off the sudden onset of driving, the blonde turns her head to the side to understand what they want from her. The head maid, smiling, comes a little closer to remind her of the meeting. Mr. Cartian is already waiting for the lady in the garden, and therefore it is better to go down there as quickly as possible, because now everything is known. Smiling as if nothing had happened, the lady nods her head. She seems happy because of what was said and because of the imminent coronation. You should hurry to be on time and not make anyone wait. Rising, the girl, carefully picking up the hem of her dress, which seems too long and shiny, follows down the stairs. Beige shoes that match the color of the fabric of the clothes quietly knock on the stone floor, making sounds. Walking outside through the main entrance, which leads to the garden, the blonde begins to look around. She was told that her husband should be in the garden, but at the moment she sees absolutely nothing. Walking further and already losing all hope, thereby not raising her spirits, the lady suddenly notices black hair. They shine in the sun, as if emitting light without any help, and it is not at all difficult to guess who they belong to. The eyes widen, and the heart skips a beat. The beauty is trying to calm down, realizing that she has finally found the one she has been looking for the last 5 to 7 minutes throughout the entire area. Exclaiming the name of her lover, Latya hurries as fast as she can to quickly get to the man's side. He does not immediately notice some movement in the distance, but a familiar voice helps him return to reality. Turning around, the guy smiles, clearly happy that he can finally see his future wife. He doesn't seem to pay attention to time at all. Running a little closer, the beauty, blushing a little, asks if she was too late and if she kept him waiting. The efforts were justified, because the maiden hurried as fast as she could, despite everything that had happened. It seems that something has changed in my head, and it's all because of the words of Mary and Anne. Karshian, surprisingly, seems older than usual, which was not noticed until today. The man is sitting on the edge of the fountain, so without waiting for his answer or any invitation, the girl comes and sits next to him. She looks into her lover's hands, and noticing the little thing, asks what it is, to which she is told that it is a wreath. Turning her gaze to the beautiful product made from a variety of flowers picked from the garden, Latya asks why he suddenly needed a wreath and why today. Smiling a little at the corner of his lips, the brunette looks down, trying to explain himself. He wants to put a ring on the finger of his future wife, but she is still very young for this, so the best solution is to make a wreath. The blonde freezes hearing these words. Strange thoughts begin to spin in her head, while the lady thinks about what she should do next. She can just accept the thing and be happy, or she can start asking a lot of questions that will then have a bad effect on their relationship. Smiling, but trying to hide her excitement, the girl asks if this was a kind of request for the lady's hand and heart, to which the young man stutters and says that it was more like a kind of announcement. If a girl wants to refuse to be his wife, she will have to give some arguments in her favor, since a refusal will not be accepted simply. Such words seem absurd, but the lady tries to think about everything that is happening. Trying to appear as convincing as possible, the brunette says that in case of refusal, he has prepared 29,213 reasons for the girl to marry him. This number seems quite unusual, but at the same time convincing, because it may be true. Lifting the wreath into the air, the man comes closer, as if trying to ask permission. He wants to start begging that the beauty not refuse him, because what is really important to him is that she becomes his legal wife after she comes of age. Extending his hand even closer, and no longer hoping for anything, the guy notices how the interlocutor stretches out her palm and carefully grabs the little thing. The calm tone of the voice makes you relax, while Latya promises that she will not refuse, because otherwise she will blame herself all her life. Everything turns out in the best possible way, and everything seems to be going as it should. However, while smiling, the girl does not put the wreath on her head. She talks about how she won't be his wife because she has a better idea. Turning towards her betrothed, the girl abruptly places a wreath on the top of the brunette's head, who freezes, clearly not expecting such a turn of events. It would be better if he became her husband, thereby making the union what they would like. The pupils dilate a little, and the heart begins to beat faster. The eyes seem to be looking at one point, when, like a prince, he is trying to digest the entire current situation, as well as the information he has just received. Deciding not to remain silent for more than a few minutes, the Lord smiles. He does not want to refuse his beloved, so he nods in agreement, agreeing to this scenario in their relationship. Nodding her head in agreement, the blonde seems immensely joyful. She didn't expect such an event to happen today, and she certainly didn't expect it to end in the best possible way for her, which seemed strange. Rising from her seat, the beauty takes the emperor's hand from hers, and they head towards the castle doors. The discussion is over, so everything will be exactly as they decided today in this very place, in the garden. The girl considers herself quite ordinary. However, other people seem to hate her completely, trying to survive. Many people say that she is a sleepwalker who likes to torment people by getting up in her sleep and not even feeling anything. Others believe that there is no future for her because she is so defective that no one wants to marry her. Perhaps there will be that one person who will choose a different path, but if he is with Latia, he will die. The maiden is considered the greatest villain and wicked witch of the century, even if she is not one. People around are always whispering and are afraid to do at least something against her will. Hatred sometimes seems to go beyond all bounds. People most often don't even want to understand how everything happens and why the blonde seems strange. Everything went as far as beatings, as well as throwing rotten food. The people believed that the best solution would be to kill the witch without even understanding what she did and what she was not to blame for. The power of rumors is one of the most terrible things in this world. There was never even one person in the crowd who suddenly decided to say that the blonde was a good girl and would never do any of the listed atrocities. There are no people who would want to listen to her. Most often, it is impossible to wash away such shame even over the years. But for the main character, everything happens in exactly this way, because people consider her like that, and nothing can change their opinion. Her name is Latia Gladys. It is known that she came from where she was not expected, and now the girl only hopes that one day she will earn pardon, thereby clearing her name and becoming normal in the eyes of the rest of the people around her. The hands are behind the back, tied with tight and thick ropes that do not even allow you to move or try to escape and save your life. There is no noblewoman in this empire less scandalous than this young lady. Several people are standing on the stage, kneeling with their hands tied and their heads bowed. Loud exclamations can only be heard around her as she is forced to ask for forgiveness from Lord Karshian. She dared to insult him, thereby hurting his inviolable honor and status. Tears well up in her eyes, even if the blonde doesn't want to show herself weak in front of other people. She doesn't understand why she should be the one to ask for forgiveness, even if she did absolutely nothing. She is the eldest daughter of the privileged house of Gladys, as well as a noblewoman. Latia doesn't understand why she even has to apologize when her family is being treated in such a terrible way. None of her loved ones clearly deserve to be executed. They didn't even deserve to stand shamefully on this stand like this, showing people their faces, just to be disgraced. The gaze of evil eyes shoots up, even if the head is not allowed to be raised higher than a few centimeters. Virgo understands exactly whose fault it is, so she doesn't need to think about it for more than a few minutes. The whole problem lies in the man, who seems to be a fiend himself. This is none other than Claude Lomdesel. He is a duke, so he simply pretends that everything is allowed to him, accordingly forcing the rest of the people in the city to believe his every word. The family comes from the self-proclaimed Lomdesel estate. This situation seems extremely ironic, because until recently, this family was just a family descended from a poor count. No one ever thought about high status, because everyone understood that it was not available to them. The count left his only son to Latia's father, who was his longtime friend. He went to the sea on the run from bankruptcy, but no one knew that the man would return as a hero, having opened the first sea trade route through which all shipments would be made. The guy even managed to eradicate piracy, which had been a problem of the empire since ancient times, forcing everyone to live in fear. He was able to include some of them in the ranks of the army, thereby increasing the defense. When Claude returned home, his merits were taught by the emperor, because he understood that few people managed to travel such a long way and perform so many heroic deeds. He received the title of duke, providing himself with a carefree life. Everything started to go downhill when the girl's father began to believe that Lomdesel had died at sea and began to consider his son an eyesore. The attitude deteriorated in a rapid progression, thereby ascribing a death sentence in the future. Most often, humiliation occurred even because of the smallest things, which, as a rule, should not have been counted at all in this case. Food always flew onto the floor, leaving a lot of dirt. The accusations seemed real, but at the same time too cruel. The man was shouting that it cost him a fortune to raise such a guy who was no better than some bug from a garden outside. According to him, one could understand that slaves like him should know their place. It didn't matter what he did. It still wasn't enough. Latia always tried not to push the poor boy so hard, but she also did her bit. She stood next to her mother, asking if it was true that no one could accept him even if he ran away. Mom always nodded and said that except for Gladys's house, no one could take care of such a monster. Such words clearly upset the boy, who for a long time had not wanted to do anything at all because of the influence that was pressing all the time. Everything happened according to merit. Now the people were shouting, asking that the criminals who had wronged the son of the hero of the empire be punished for their crimes against humanity. Everyone wanted simple justice and nothing more. The girl sadly looks at the floor. She cannot say that it was not her fault, because it seemed to her that she was simply going with the flow, and that is why she also offended Karshin. The guy suffered too much and could not forgive anyone. Now you have to get what you deserve, because the punishment seems quite real. The knights will literally do what they are asked to do in just a few minutes, and then everything will be quickly completed. Someone from the crowd shouted that the family was fighting. Someone claimed that they were engaged in the slave trade, which was prohibited by His Majesty a very long time ago. And someone simply said that this was a family of hypocrites who would never do not wash away the shame. The blonde tried not to cry, but only quietly asked her mother what would happen to them now, to which she received a strange answer, not even addressed to her. According to the woman, Latya was to blame for everything. She kept records of battles every day, and only for this purpose she decided to study mathematics. The girl was always the only one who offended Karshian. Such words make the beauty fall into horror because a loved one decided to frame her daughter. The father bows down, saying that nothing can be fixed. They may say that she abused the boy, but no one will believe that a 10-year-old girl fought and kept records, thereby enjoying it all. The red-haired lady still doesn't want to calm down. In the end, they have an account book, and therefore they can understand all the details from it, as well as conduct an examination, indicating exactly whose handwriting it was. The screams do not stop, while the truth comes out. Latya is an illegitimate child, born by someone unknown. This phrase makes you freeze, and tears stream down your face with new, redoubled force, making it clear that everything is bad. The girl is shaking, trying to understand why she is doing all this. She never thought that she was an illegitimate child, nor did she know that her family would be against her. It seems that no one in this world could deserve such an attitude. Trying to calm down enough to at least say something, the blonde asks if Mom is joking. She can't be adopted because it sounds more like some kind of nonsense. All her life she had been told the opposite, but now they decided to change their minds. The woman grins and doesn't even want to listen to any arguments addressed to her. For her, everything is already clear because the girl is just a useless brat who had to be left in their house through force, thereby ruining her whole life as a whole. Holding the red-haired child closer to her, the beauty says that Elena is her only daughter, which means she really means it. They are both scared, so no one knows how things will go. Turning to Latya again, the mother says that she no longer has words left to explain the situation. The lady must answer for her actions before humanity. Tears flow from her eyes again, while the blonde breaks into a deafening cry. She did all this just to be appreciated because the beauty wanted at least someone to love her. She never cared about her family's attitude. The tirade is interrupted by the knight, who forcefully grabs the girl's head and presses it to the wooden floor, thereby leaving pain on her forehead. The perpetrators should remain silent and not try to sort things out right in front of the public. The pain spreads throughout the body more and more. I want to burst into tears more than ever, and so that someone could feel sorry for the girl who, it seems, got what she deserved even for her small age. Gladys endured everything for the sake of her family in order to gain at least some meaning. However, everything she believed in turned out to be a lie that they simply tried to hide under a veil. No one ever cared about the feelings of others in this house. Now it is no longer clear who exactly Latya is. She cannot call herself someone from her kind, because, as it turned out, her mother was a completely different, incomprehensible person who was not even with her for all 10 years of her life. My head hurts so much that it feels like everything will end soon after it just explodes. Because of the force applied to her, the man felt joy, but the captive, on the contrary, experienced severe pain. Memories of how the girl spent time with her entire sister began to pop up in her head, and also how she simply enjoyed life. This is what is meant when it is said that a whole life flashed before your eyes in one moment. The memories did not stop at the moment of the birth of the child. A woman with dark hair appears before her eyes, sitting in a chair in front of several monitors with some kind of graphs. Looking into the distance, it seems that it is someone familiar due to the fact that the facial features are somewhat similar to her. The brown-haired woman picks up something from the table and then, taking it in her hands, looks down somewhere. Wrinkling her nose, the girl tries to understand why her name is written there. The very first page talked about Latia Gladeliz, the villain who offended Karshian and was executed for all her atrocities. She did not ask for mercy, but simply accepted her fate with honor, which she did not have left. The thought process begins furiously in my head. This is not just a book, because now the memories are becoming clearer. Before this, the brown-haired girl lived a different life, but just one book changed everything in this world. Being someone else, the girl read Latia's name in the book. She was reborn and became the same blonde who was supposed to be executed because of everything she had done over a long period of time, even if she only managed to live 10 years in this body. Thoughts haunt me, even if it all ends very soon. It's strange that things turned out this way, and now, life really does seem funny when you think about it in such a strange way. Tears accumulate in my eyes again. For some reason, the lady's memories returned only before her death. It is not clear why this did not happen earlier, because, according to all the laws of logic, this should not have happened now. We need to figure out what to do with this. The lady was abandoned by the people she considered her family. I don't want to admit my failure, but they simply turned away from her, not considering it necessary to take care of their daughter. The maids in the estate also mocked her, not considering her their mistress. It is quite sad to realize that it is precisely such terrible memories that will become the last in the head, which very soon will not belong to the body, lying somewhere to the side. My thoughts are interrupted by the cry of the emperor coming from the rostrum. The family and servants standing nearby are still silent, while the man orders the execution to begin right now, so as not to waste even more time on strange excuses. As it turned out, the girl's life had been hanging on a rotten rope all this time. These people who surrounded the beauty were none other than her own mother and father. They were the bad, rotten link in their family. The blonde turned out to be the same person who acted first and thought later. She turned out to be the one who led the bullying of Karshian, who only hoped that everything would end as soon as possible, because all this time he was incredibly ill, both morally and physically. Everything was done just to attract attention, which was the very thing that ruined the whole future life for the beauty. It was her, the one who arranged and calculated everything that her nasty family needed. My hands are still tied, so I wouldn't be able to wipe my tears even if I wanted to. The head bows even lower, speaking to what is about to happen. The executioner is ready to strike and then do it over and over again, sparing no one. If the girl had known everything before she died, her life would probably have been completely different, and everything would have turned out differently. No one said what to do, but if at least someone had said that the maiden was wrong, she would have managed to survive and not die. Memories pop up in my head. Gladeliz's name is called, and she turns, distracted from what she was already about to do. It seems to her as if these few seconds are dragging on for an eternity. Not understanding what is happening, the girl tries to find with her eyes who is making the sounds of sobbing and who is speaking with these words, trying to force the mistress to stop. The head maid, who seemed to be the only one who treated the blonde well, runs closer and falls to her knees, continuing to burst into tears. She begs her to stop and stop hurting anyone. Susan says words that hit home. The woman knows that the girl is not like that at all. The love she tries to get for her antics is not sincere. The family doesn't want to get their hands dirty, so they force Latya to do all the unnecessary things. This is reminiscent of a moment of what happened before. The lady said that we should stop being so extremely cruel, and also offered to run away with her to far away, so that Karshian would not receive so much pain. Freedom seemed to be just around the corner, but the girl broke the brown-haired girl's heart by saying that she would never run away with some nanny who didn't even know anything about life. Consequences that cannot be changed most often remain too painful. The blonde did just that, thereby depriving herself of a normal life, as well as any choice in the future, intending to die at the age of 10. The dark-haired boy stands and is silent, trying not to make unnecessary sounds, so as not to attract attention to himself, as well as anger, which would fall upon him immediately. He puts his hand to his neck, looking with hostility at the girl, who is still just a few steps away from him. It seems that he doesn't like everything that's happening, even though he would like the beauty to change for the better. The heart shrinks inwards when the girl tries to understand why Karshian is looking at her so strangely. It seems that the guy is right here, and these are no longer memories that I would like to emerge from, so as not to feel even more hatred for myself. Freezing, the beauty backs away. She can't believe what's happening, but it seems like it's all true. She returned to the past and can now change something in her life for the better. Karshian, who a moment ago was with his illustrious father, again became that little boy who was wronged by the Gladeliz family. His eyes expressed sadness, while he tried to lower his gaze somewhere to the floor at his shoes. Latia tries to digest all the information she has managed to extract in the last few minutes. All this seems like someone's joke, because someone decided to give a second chance, thereby saving themselves and saving their heads. Understanding, like a huge wave or tsunami, covers the beauty. She runs towards the mirror, which is located in the library where she and the guy are. Being nearby and looking into her reflection, the heroine freezes, trying to restrain herself so as not to scream in a voice that is not her own. She grew into a teenager and became much younger. This body is a little unusual, even if everything was exactly the same before. I want to be happy, but at the same time, all the information received seems too complicated for a small head. Virgo managed not only to be reborn, but also to go back in time in a new body, thereby giving herself many new chances. Attention is drawn to Susan, who is still in the same place, kneeling and folding her hands in a pleading gesture. She wants her mistress to realize all her mistakes, not knowing that she has already seen how everything could end if she doesn't stop now. Turning to the maid, the girl remembers one interesting detail that cannot be ignored. The head maid was kicked out 3 years ago, but it's extremely difficult to remember exactly why. The Count's son, who cleared the Sea of Pirates, would attract a lot of attention, so the family was kind to Karshian. Marcus Albus used the Lord's accounts to his advantage, hoping that he would never return. At first everything was great, but once public interest waned, the boy became nothing more than a liability. The accounts began to empty, which means the whole performance is slowly but smoothly coming to an end. Susan was the person who tried to protect the guy from the attacks of the Count, thereby saving him from beatings. But then her mother kicked her out because of hypocrisy, which in fact was something else. Realization hits the girl again. Building a ladder of events, she begins to slowly realize exactly how much time she has, and how she needs to use it so as not to fall into a trap. The brown-haired girl is still here, and everything is fine with her. She rushes to the young man's defense, as if everything had returned to normal. This all means only one thing, and that is that there are at least 3 more years left until the blonde's death, and maybe even more than this period. Clenching her hand into a fist, the heroine understands that this is her chance, which is definitely worth using, trying so that it does not affect her in any way. Virgo found herself in a book that she found and began reading in a past life, being a completely different person. I want to be happy, but now she is still not in a position to try to at least somehow change events. If you try, Latia will be able to stay alive, because she will not be considered public enemy number 1 and the person who bullied the hero's son. The creaking of the front door handle pulls me out of my thoughts. The sounds are coming from very close, and all this is because of the guy who most likely tried to take advantage of the situation to quietly sneak away before he got hit in the head again. Running up to the young man, the girl extends her hand, as if trying to weightlessly stop the figure. She apologizes and asks him not to leave, but the words sound very quiet and uncertain, making it clear that he did not hear anything. A sharp reaction puts you into a stupor. The brunette turns around and pushes his companion away with his hand, who doesn't seem to understand anything. A too terrible picture of what is happening has already formed in his head, so he cannot be blamed for such a reaction. Without intending to do anything, the boy turns and, sparkling with tears in his eyes, says that the girl can say what she wanted, but he forbids her to come closer than a meter or touch him with a finger. Freezing, the blonde tries to come to her senses from everything that happened. The hand turned a little red due to the blow, which was completely accidental. I want to explain myself, but putting my words together into at least some sentences becomes not an easy task. Frowning, the heroine comes to the conclusion that she cannot say anything against this. It's only natural to react this way, considering everything she's done over the past 6 months, maybe even a year. Trying not to show her nervousness, the blonde tries to find the right words to explain herself. She doesn't want to be considered a monster, but after everything that happened, she simply cannot suddenly do some strange action. Bowing her head, the baby clenches her hands into fists, asking for forgiveness from the bottom of her heart. The decision was made a long time ago, and now it becomes clear that all that remains is to try to change your life. This time, the beauty will not make her old mistakes, and life will be completely different. The brunette stands there, just blinking his eyes. He digests the information that clearly shocked him and then quietly asks again, trying to understand whether it was true or whether they decided to mock him once again. Still without raising her head, the blonde says that she is very sorry that she adored him all this time. Previously, before she was able to see the essence of her family, she thought that she was doing the right thing, thereby deserving more love and respect from her father and mother. Now she realizes that she was being stupid. The girl doesn't want to harm anyone anymore, thereby making things worse for everyone around her, especially since a person like Karshian certainly didn't deserve this. He's a good guy, and it's more of a test. I want to cry again, because the blonde understands perfectly well that she has no excuse. Such actions are usually committed with full awareness, and even though the maiden has now changed her mind, this probably means nothing to him. Now looking up at her interlocutor's face, the girl again says that she is very sorry. You even want to kneel down to beg for forgiveness, because everything that happened has a terrible echo somewhere in the back of your memory, echoing dully in your head. The gaze darts from side to side. Latia hates her past self, because everything that happened only because of her. The boy probably thinks that she is simply making excuses, but everything said comes from the heart. The guy clearly doesn't have words that could describe his emotions at the moment. He could never have expected this turn of events after everything that had happened, because the girl didn't seem like someone who could ever stop. The silence does not last more than a few minutes, as the beauty's gaze stops on the cheek of the young man, who is still silent. Grabbing his cheeks with her hands, the blonde examines the wound in surprise. He tries to ask what the heroine is doing, while her thoughts are carried away somewhere very far away. It seems that the past version of this baby was crazy, because such injuries seem terrible, especially for a boy who is no older than 10 years old. Deciding not to waste another second, Gladys turns towards Susan and asks her to bring the ointment. The woman doesn't understand why everything changed so quickly, but she has no right to refuse, so she quickly nods her head before leaving anywhere. Someone enters the room, making the sound of heels clicking. A female voice asks the lady, clarifying what she said, because it was impossible to hear such a thing from Latia's lips. The girl was none other than Betty. The friend was tall, with a terrible character and beautiful hair, which compensated for all her disadvantages for others. The expression on her face made it clear that she was clearly unhappy. Smiling, the beauty turns towards the maid, trying to pretend that everything is in perfect order. She should quickly come up with some kind of excuse or immediately tell the whole truth so as not to torment her conscience any longer. Betty served the girl when Susan was kicked out of the estate. Everything started to work out, and over time they became best friends and were always together. The picture seemed perfect, but all this happened only because of bullying Karshian, who was their common goal. I don't want to remember this, but now, having returned in time, the heroine was very glad to see a friend who clearly did not share her thoughts. The maid asks why the mistress is behaving extremely strangely, because they don't have extra ointment in the house for some kind of parasite. Freezing, the girl tries to hold back the tears that could not come so easily because of some insult. Only now did the awareness of everything that was happening come into the young head. Betty was often rude to Latia, even though they were very close. She tried to hide it, but the essence made its way out when it insulted the child due to any missteps. Other thoughts come to mind. This lady was always so arrogant, but earlier, due to age and rose-colored glasses, the heroine did not notice any mistakes and always tried to remain positive due to the situation. Anger appears in the girl's head when she realizes that her friend may have known that she was an illegitimate child. That is why the virgin could not get close to her family, which caused her a lot of pain. An activity begins in the head that helps put all the puzzles into one big one. If Betty knew this fact, then surely everyone else was aware of it too. Now everything has become clear, because that is why all the servants treated Gladys so badly. She was a nobody in this house, so everyone considered it necessary to also quietly humiliate her, but not in such a terrible form as Karshiana. Susan steps forward and snaps the girl out of her thoughts. She comes to her defense, outraged by this behavior, because the maid does not dare talk to her mistress like that. She should apologize now to prevent things from getting worse. Tears of joy mixed with shame well up in the child's eyes. What happens seems very sweet and at the same time brave, because not everyone would want to stand up for her. Susan always remained on Latia's side and did not try to treat her badly or mock her, although she probably knew the whole truth. This was not excluded. Throwing up her hands, Betty tries to justify herself, looking rather pathetic. The medicinal herbs from which the ointment is prepared are very rare. There won't be enough if you spend it on everyone, especially since it will be very expensive later. The words sound almost convincing, but the heroine has returned to the past. She still remembers the feeling of the execution and how scared she was. If nothing is done then, the exact same fate awaits her, which is terrible. Clenching her hand into a fist, the blonde is thinking about what she should answer. Determination is displayed on her face, because she is not going to repeat her old mistakes that led to that very terrible situation. Out of the corner of her gaze, the girl looks at Karshian, who looks scared and at the same time angry. First of all, you need to show your friend that she is on his side. Otherwise, nothing will come of it even after an apology. Approaching closer to the maid, the girl turns to her, asking if she really believes that the heroine knows nothing about medicinal herbs because she has never seen them in her life. Virgo is the eldest daughter of the House of Gladelies, so of course she knows how much herbs are worth. She doesn't know more than the lady who is in charge here. Betty does not dare lecture in her position, so the best solution would be to remain silent. Rude behavior is not something that should be practiced with a future estate protector, so it will be punished. Folding her arms across her chest, the girl seems to be in a rather belligerent mood. She could feed her friend to the wild dogs right now, so you should think first before you open your mouth and try to teach anyone without asking. A little scared, Betty asks if it's true, but then anger shows on her face. She doesn't believe what she says, even if it's true. Smiling back with the same strange smile full of contempt, the girl understands that her friend probably believes that an illegitimate child does not have such power, but she must have forgotten that the family is trying to maintain an image of being kind and caring. Moving closer to the chest of drawers, Ladia continues her story. If the maid didn't know, then the mistress has a lot of jewelry right here that can be used for something necessary and important. Taking out the necklace, the blonde says that many would probably not mind getting rid of the maid in exchange for at least one of them. Their price is quite high, which means that because of this, the body of the maiden will never be found. Still not hiding the trinket, the beauty, lowering her voice a semitone lower, repeats once again that you should watch your tongue, otherwise everything will end too badly. This was the last warning before action. Falling to her knees, Betty tries to pretend that she wants to apologize, but at the same time she does not want to be any different and say at least one word in her defense, because she has nothing to say. Smiling and experiencing obvious delight, the blonde notices that now her friend is in her rightful place, even if she does not want to admit it. Relaxing a little, Mistress assures Betty that it is best for her to be in this position every time she sees Gladelies. Otherwise, things will be much worse next time. Leaning even more, the girl quietly agrees and nods, confirming that she understood everything, which means that no additional explanations will be needed in any case. The girl is released, because now she is no longer needed in this room. Therefore, after a few seconds, the door to the room slams with a very loud sound, which expresses the displeasure of the one who just left. Turning to Susan again, so as not to waste so much precious time anymore, the girl asks her to bring the ointment, while Karshian looks around in surprise, trying to understand whether this is true or just a good dream. After some time, the beauty finds herself in the hands of an ointment in a beautiful jar. Moving a little closer to the guy, she tries to offer something to ease the pain after blows all over his body. An angry expression on her face stops Latia. The brunette takes a few steps back and then asks what the girl needed and what she was up to this time, because such kindness certainly could not be just to show her good side. Smiling an abnormal smile, he suddenly says that he understands why she needs all this. She simply decided to have mercy on the poor guy who had nowhere else to go, so she decided to take such a step. Trying not to scare the boy away, the heroine only quietly says that she will no longer behave this way, and therefore she again asks for forgiveness. Quiet. What? This is all that the interlocutor manages to say, who still cannot come to his senses. Bowing her head, showing her humility, the blonde assures that from today and from this moment on, she will no longer dare to offend her new friend and will no longer bring him pain. There is silence in the room, pressing on the ears. Two figures stand a meter away from each other, and each of them tries to believe in what is happening and pretend that everything is normal, even in this situation. I can't believe that the girl really thinks that way. The brunette asks again about this, hoping that this is not another stupid joke that will make him regret everything he has ever done in this life. Finishing the sentence, the young man says that she cannot hope that he will be stupid enough to believe her after all that she has done during all this time, showing her cruelty every day. Turning around to walk away, or better yet, leave the room, the brunette says that she shouldn't even be trusted. The blonde tries to stop him, begging him to do such a thing just once, and after that, nothing will happen. No longer knowing what to say to convince the guy, the heroine suddenly says that he should have noticed that no one here considers her part of the family, and therefore everyone treats her as their sole desires, almost with beatings, as in his case. Bowing her head, the mistress admits that she has been wrong all along, prompting a sigh from Susan, who cannot believe it. The girl thought that they would pay attention to her if she offended Karshin, because she needed love, which she had never been able to receive. However, the family remained happy with just the three of them, enjoying each other's company. As the head maid said, the love Latya receives is insincere. Nobody wants to take care of the beauty, because it is all just a pretense on their part. Susan bows her head, realizing that she may have made a mistake, but is quietly glad that her mistress finally managed to realize her mistakes before it was too late. The girl asks Karshin to take the ointment, but a scream abruptly interrupts everyone in this room. The brunette shouts that he doesn't care what the girl wants to say or how, because he no longer has any strength left for all this. Turning towards the door again, the boy says that it doesn't matter to him what he has to do. Even if a lady kneels before him and begs to be forgiven, he will never even accept medicine from her hands. The door slams shut with a terrible thud. This idea makes both of them look away, not understanding what they should do next. It looks like the road to forgiveness will be much more difficult than expected. There is only enough strength to just quietly exhale the air. In my head, I hear echoes of words that were spoken quite recently, although it feels like several hours have passed. It is not clear what to do now, because the boy does not want to believe in good intentions. A good idea comes up, because perhaps you can bang your head on the floor, and then everything will fall into place if you do this at least a few times. From the side, Susan tries to call out to the mistress, attracting her attention. The next morning came, which seemed very grueling. The stomach makes strange sounds, more like the rumbling of a whale. The hand clenches into a fist, and then with all its strength it slams into the pillow that lies on the bed, as if nothing had happened, not expecting that all the anger would be released on it. Continuing to do boxing moves, the beauty tries to understand why she should go on a diet, because she is only 7 years old. While in the garden in the morning, the girl, as usual, was about to go to breakfast, but she was interrupted by a woman's voice, which said that Ladia had gained weight, thereby causing a stupor on her face. The mother, waving her fan, says that the baby will not be popular among the young lords if she is overweight. Today, she remains without any food for the whole day. Betty's look seems even more angry because she seems to be happy about such failures in the life of Gladys, who harmed her and put her in her place yesterday. Now, after what happened, the girl remembered how her mother used to punish her, thereby leaving her without food. Betty arranged it all, and there was absolutely no doubt about it. The lady was the woman's right hand, and therefore reported on the young lady's every move. The mother probably already knew that the blonde took Karshin's side after everything that happened, so it didn't give her any peace. Sitting back down on the bed and letting her hands relax, the blonde tries to remember how things used to be. It is impossible not to notice, however, that the woman was always stingy in everything that seemed to her young daughter. Food and desserts were a given. It seemed that everyone around wanted to make the girl feel guilty for eating anything, or even living in the house. The woman always gave expensive jewelry to Elena, and not to her other daughter, even if she was very young and did not understand the true value of such unique gifts. Everything always only got worse and worse, and the maiden herself did not notice it. There was a separate conversation about clothes, because when Latya asked why she couldn't get new clothes, but only wore what Elena didn't like, they didn't answer her. Gently stroking her blonde hair, the mother said that the lady was older, which meant she could let her sister do as she wanted. Not having the strength to refuse, thereby driving herself into a trap, the girl always agreed, saying that she was a good sister for acting this way. The lady forced the heroine to consider this as obvious things and something normal, pretending that everything was fine. Then there were no rules in my head, and the truth was hidden under a thick layer of lies, which was considered the norm in this house. Lowering her bare feet onto the stone floor, the girl tries to drive away the unpleasant memories that make her soul and heart shrink, remaining in the desire to escape. Now it is important to gain Karshin's trust, and then everything will become much better, thereby saving him from the future. However, first you need to think about how she can survive in this terrible house in which everyone hates her. By placing her hand on the glass, the beauty drives away bad thoughts. You need to focus on bringing back memories from your past life. From there, only a few quick snippets were shown. Without this knowledge, everything will be over, because only by understanding the whole essence, the beauty will be able to understand how to survive and help herself in this difficult world. Leaning slightly with her back against the wooden wall located near the huge window, Latia realizes that her stomach is beginning to growl more than ever. She wonders when Susan will come, who promised to bring some food. As if reading the main character's thoughts, the maid knocks on the door. Immediately jumping up, the blonde, without any prompting, understands who exactly came. The door opens, and a brown-haired woman appears on the threshold, holding a tray with a variety of dishes. She says that she finally brought breakfast, which means she won't have to starve anymore. Placing the food on the table, the girl says that the chef gave her his lunch, so now there is no need to wait any longer. The man turned out to be extremely friendly. Changing the topic, the maid smiles, saying that the lady is probably dying of hunger, which means she can start eating. Susan probably hadn't eaten most of the day either, but she decided to sacrifice her food. The gaze drops down, while a kind of struggle is going on in the head about what should be done, because the child was extremely well-mannered. Grabbing the bun, the heroine carefully divides it into 2 parts, saying that the maid is probably also hungry, which means they can split the food between 2. The brunette freezes, not daring to utter words and blushing. She is very touched by such a simple act, which means we can only guess what kind of girl she thought she was all this time. Bowing her head in gratitude and accepting the meal from her hands, the woman talks about how compassionate and kind the girl is to others. Suddenly, a strange phrase bursts out from behind, saying that, as always, the adults who did it all are to blame for everything. Not understanding what they are talking about, the blonde asks again, trying to get to the bottom of the truth. Putting her hand to her mouth, the brown-haired girl apologizes, because that's not what she meant at all. To be honest, she doesn't support gossip in the kitchen, but she has already heard many times how other servants talked. Many believe that the young lady is hypocritical in her relationships and towards others. Not understanding what we are talking about, the lady tries to clarify whether this is true, or not everyone was talking about it. Thinking about something, the maid says that an order has been received for Mr. Karshin to also starve. Only if someone else also suffers can the heroine learn her lesson. Freezing with the spoon halfway, the girl asks again, trying to clarify and find out if this is true, because everything no longer seems real. The eyes widen in shock. Now the boy is starving because Latia did not mock him and even tried to intercede. This certainly worries the interlocutor, because no one deserves such treatment. Looking at the floor, the girl tries to figure out what to do. Everything seems too confusing, because even if she doesn't bully the guy, she will still be indirectly involved in all the dirt. The beauty thought that she could reduce his suffering, but everything remains the same. In a way, the situation only got worse, even if the girl didn't lay a finger on him. Deciding on that very important act, the blonde expresses a desire to take it all to Karshin, thereby causing mixed feelings in the maid, who asks again, hoping that she heard everything correctly. Latia raises the tray in her hands, saying that she still hasn't touched the bread and soup, which means that this food could be treated to a boy who is now probably even worse off than she is. Looking rather touched again, the maid started to say something, but was interrupted by a cheerful voice that suggested she go to his room. The guy is still awake, which means it could have been done right now. Burning with joy, the brunette assures that the young man still did not go to bed, because just recently she saw a light in his room, which made it clear that he was still busy with something. Feeling a little embarrassed, remembering the reaction she got last time, the girl says that they should take something else with them. Reminding her about the ointment, Latia confirms the brown-haired woman's guesses, who nods, because last time everything went wrong, and now she needs to do it again until she is accepted. Coming out into the corridor, the couple begins to move towards the room, which was on another floor. You should get there as quickly as possible and remain unnoticed, otherwise everything will be even worse. Heavy footsteps are heard in another corridor, which undoubtedly belonged to the butler, who was the very person chosen to make today's rounds. Quickly turning around, the girls hide behind one of the columns to remain invisible. Everything is quite serious, however, feeling like a child. The blonde thinks about how fun it will be if they play spies. Peering around the corner and squinting her eyes a little, the girl tries to calculate where they need to go. Karshian's room used to be on the same floor as the heroine's room in the corner, but everyone decided to change this. He was moved to the first floor in the storeroom, where the couple is now heading, while accelerating their pace, almost running, in order to have time to do everything. Stopping near the doors, both ladies try to catch their breath, exhaling air and grabbing it with their mouths. They ran almost the whole way, and especially towards the end, because someone could catch them. The door was completely boarded up, even if access was open, but perhaps this was all because the boy felt like a prisoner. Listening to the sounds, the girl exhales, because it is such a relief that he is still awake. He, most likely, simply could not sleep on an empty stomach, so he abandoned this idea. Carefully raising her hand, the beauty knocks quietly just a few times, trying not to attract too much attention from the outside. The guards for the night were two strange and aggressive people serving this family. Lowering her hand, the heroine says that this is Latya, without saying why she arrived. The couple stands and waits for the door to be opened, but even after a few minutes, no sounds are heard outside the door at all. Trying to come up with an excuse so as not to disappoint herself, the blonde thinks that the guy is just sleeping with the light on, and that's why no one has answered them now. No longer hoping to do anything, Gladys decides to just check, leaning her ear against the oak shutters, not understanding whether it seems to her or whether there really is complete silence there. After some time in complete silence, words can still be heard that are not very encouraging. A tired voice asks her to go away and leave him alone. Taking a few steps back, the blonde does not understand what the problem is. She's not going to go anywhere, but such words make her heart beat like crazy. The dream does not come at all, but some fragments are cut off halfway. The boy lies on the bed and, squeezing, tries to get rid of the nightmares that now haunt him all the time. The Count, who seemed to be the most ardent hater of his friend's son, shouted about how stupid he was. He said that the boy's father had died long ago and was on the run, which means no one cared about him. Stopping next to the guy, the voice is still persistently trying to crawl somewhere into consciousness. Since he is no longer there, it means that there is no one who could look after him, so the young man is no longer a lord, and this is worth accepting. Now everything has changed, and the brunette will have to earn his living at the machine, and this will continue almost all the time, regardless of the circumstances. Covering his ears with his palms, as if trying to escape from reality, the guy told himself that this was not true, and his father was still alive. He knew that sooner or later he would return and take him with him. His eyes open when a familiar voice appears in his head, calling him by name, trying to pull him out of the nightmare and at least help him with something. A middle-aged man stands opposite his son and hands him some paper. According to him, they will be able to keep in touch as long as he has this notepaper to help with this. Putting his palm on the guy's head, he ruffles his hair a little, saying that even if they are not close, it does not change anything, because it is worth remembering that he is always there in his heart and has never left. The young man promised to let him know if he needed help, and therefore he would have to keep his word in any case. Something went completely wrong as expected. The man in his sleep turns to the side and is about to leave, while Karshin feels all this. He breaks into screams and crying and begs his father not to go anywhere, but the figure inexorably disappears into space. Jumping up and sitting down on the bed, the brunette calls his father again, hoping that he will hear him. But this was all again just a stupid dream that seems to never come true. Exhaling air, the boy tries to adjust his breathing, because all this has made him quite nervous. Such dreams come almost every day, and now nothing will change. Bowing his head, Karshin quietly cries. He really dreams that at least something will change and that he will be pitied, but this makes no sense at the moment. Getting up and lighting the lamp on the table, the brunette sits down and lays out the paper that was given to him before leaving, just like the quill and ink that were still preserved. For the past 3 months, the boy had not heard anything from his father, which was extremely sad and frightening. He had already sent an endless number of letters, but nothing helped him get to his destination. The eyes widen, while the hero experiences convulsions, which are reinforced by fear, creeping into the consciousness more and more. There is no way that something really happened and the Duke was right. Perhaps there was an accident or something worse that took its toll. Now he will never be able to hear his father's voice again, except in his dreams. Grasping his shirt with his hands, the young man bends over more and more, trying not to let such bad thoughts into his head. He knows for sure that everything is fine with his father, which means he shouldn't worry about it so much. Tears stream down your cheeks. The guy didn't realize how bad everything was until he thought about it for more than 15 minutes, which seemed capable of changing at least something in this life. Another image pops up in my head, and it is none other than the already familiar blonde, who, bowing her head, promises that she will not do this again. His eyes widen sharply, while the brunette tries to restrain his emotions and not get personal or angry, which later will be impossible to contain in any case. Latya still can't get it out of her head, saying that from now on she will no longer offend him. There is genuine regret on his face, but he doesn't believe it. After everything that happened, it's quite difficult to start trusting people again. Brushing aside all this, as if hoping that it will all pass, the brunette thinks about what kind of nonsense this is. The girl probably just wanted to fool him, thereby ruining everything. She would have taken advantage of the situation a little later than she would have liked. The next frame showed the same thing, but the lady said something completely different. She talks about how everyone has long noticed that no one here considers her part of the family, thereby showing that she is just a brat. The lady was right, because the guy knew all this and had noticed it a long time ago, because he was an observant child who did not need to put too much effort into it. He knew the reason for the servant's mistreatment of Latya and often heard her complaining to her mother about everything that was happening while he was cleaning the area or doing some other work. Standing on the bridge, the woman bent down and asked the girl how rudely they had treated her, to which she did not immediately receive an answer due to the fact that the baby was crying. She talked about how pins stuck into her dress, and it was all the fault of one of the maids. In a hypocritical tone, the mother only always said that it was very good that she was not hurt, even if she probably complained about it in her heart. While doing his job, the boy did not often notice the maids, who discussed the whole situation over and over again. The marquise pretended that she knew nothing. Behind all this was none other than the red-haired lady. She was the one who asked to scatter the pins and do many other dirty tricks that showed her attitude towards her daughter. One day, while in the yard, the guy heard perhaps too much. The maids, as usual, were discussing everything, and one of them mentioned that Latya is an illegitimate child who lives here simply because it happened that way. Thinking about this, the young man often stopped short, because it was none of his business. The family should have sorted it all out themselves so that it would not be transferred to others and not brought into society. Leaning towards her daughter, the lady asked if she was angry, to which she was told that the girl was just upset. The child was interrupted, asking if she needed to take out her outburst of anger on someone. The blonde, freezing, immediately raised her head towards her mother to ask if she really could do this and why exactly this was being done. Nodding quietly, the lady only said that this should only be done on someone not from their family. No one has the right to mistreat family members, so it's okay to choose someone else. The marquise always gave the example of a guy who, according to her, eavesdropped like a rat. He didn't mean to act this way, but he was always the one to take out all the anger in their family on. The mother manipulated the child, trying to force her to do something that she did not want to do with her own hands. To be an adult, you need to learn this art, because without expressing emotions, nothing will come of it. Latya was little, so she believed this nonsense. The lady said that only in this way could she ensure that no one despises her. She would be proud of her daughter, so she should at least try. Smiling and hoping to earn as much love as possible, the main character agrees because she wants her mother to be happy. Then she didn't care anymore. Latya was just a toy that older people used for their own purposes. She's hungry for praise, so she was going to do whatever she was ever told to do. A moment comes to mind from yesterday, when the girl confidently said that Susan is right, because the love she receives is not sincere. This turn of events seemed extremely unexpected, even if one would like to be convinced of the veracity of the words. Then Latya seemed not to be the one whom the boy had known all this time from the moment he got here, but this also turned out to be a lie. Just this morning, when the guy woke up, he found one of the maids in his closet. She said that the lady had decided that today he should go without food for the whole day, and she didn't care about anything at all. The stomach makes sad sounds. The girl had not changed at all, even if she tried to seem kind after everything she had done wrong. The hand tries to calm the pain. Most likely, Latya just didn't get what she wanted, so she again showed her true nature, thereby deciding to do such an act. She wanted to hurt the guy not with her own hands, but with something more important. Grabbing the letter, which was again written for delivery, the young man only thinks about what he should do with this paper, which will not be delivered anyway. Holding the sheet closer to himself, as if hugging it, The brunette thinks that he just needs a few warm words from his father, or at least one phrase written in a letter that would force Karshan to move on and not give up under any circumstances. My thoughts are interrupted by a knock on the door. It seems measured and comes from somewhere below, as if hinting at the modest height of the arriving person. Turning to the side, the boy frowns. He doesn't understand who could come at such a late time. The whole family is probably already asleep, and only guards walk along the corridors, patrolling the area, not allowing anyone to escape. Coming closer and about to open the door, the guy hears a voice saying that it is Latia. There is no explanation why it should be here, but this is not required after everything that happened. Still angry, Karshan tries not to scream. Therefore, releasing his anger, he clenches his hand into a fist, almost squeezing his fingers, and then asks the girl to just leave, because it seems that she is just running into trouble. Anger rolls over the guy in a new wave, who no longer wants to do anything, but the voices outside the door bother him. The lady again asks to open the door, to which he asks, "Why would you do that?" The voice repeats again, trying to win over, thereby seeming to invite. The girl says that she brought food. The reaction is not long in coming, since everything that happens seems ironic. Running to the exit, the boy throws open the door with all his might, as if trying to take out his anger on it. It seems that the blood in the body begins to boil, leaving no chance. The blonde jumps away, saying that he scared her. No longer restraining himself, the brunette starts screaming, asking why the beauty is acting so strangely towards him, even if she promised to be on his side. Trying to find the right words to calm Karshan, the blonde cannot even get a word in, because through her fault, he is now starving for a whole day. For some reason, the girl changed her mind and came to him with food after she established this ban. Realizing what is going on, Latia interrupts the angry tirade, asking for time to explain herself and explain everything that is happening. It turns out that she did not offend Karshan, and therefore Mother decided to punish them. Freezing and falling silent, the young man does not understand what is happening, but then quietly asks again, because it seemed to him, or his friend said about them, which means this applies to her to some extent. She hasn't eaten anything all day. Susan said that he too was left without food, so she decided to at least bring something edible with her, even if there was not much choice. Holding out the tray, the girl invites the gentleman to accept it from her hands, while he warily examines the woman. She was definitely up to something, because perhaps she managed to either poison the food or do something else strange. Lowering his head, the boy realizes that he made a mistake by doing this to them and trying to look for a catch everywhere. He didn't want anything to go wrong, but at the same time, he couldn't just immediately start trusting the person who was bullying him. Hearing some rustling noises and then footsteps, the blonde turns towards the stairs where they are coming from. Everyone around understands exactly who came and why. The knight, who acted as a watchman at night, was the one who had to look into every corner, thereby checking everything and making sure that everything was in perfect order and everyone was sleeping. He puts his hand to his mouth as he yawns, talking about how sleepy he is. Susan was the first to understand what needed to be done. She orders the gentleman to hide, because if they find out about this, they will definitely report to the Marquise, and then nothing will definitely save them. Looking around, the girl tries to find a place where the two of them could hide. Thoughts are confused due to the fact that there is absolutely no time. Deciding to take this action, the guy turns and quietly tells them to quickly come into his room. There's no way anyone will be looking here, especially since he can pretend to be asleep, which means there's no need to disturb him. Going inside, the guy leads them inside, saying that this is a normal reaction, because he understands that if something goes wrong, they will all get in trouble, including himself. The girl's slowness is a little annoying, so a hand grabs her wrist, almost pulling her inside. I don't want anyone else to get hurt, considering all the facts. The beauty's eyes widen in surprise. She did not expect such a gesture from the prisoner, because after everything he said, it seems that this would never have happened. It would have been entirely more logical if Karshan had slammed the door right in their faces. Almost falling on top of the boy, the lady tries to keep her balance. The color is present on her cheeks, making it clear that she is a little embarrassed by such closeness. They both freeze and just look into each other's eyes. The guy still doesn't let go of his companion's hand, unable to do anything about it. A second later, the couple literally jumps away from each other, embarrassed. The girl is almost ready to scream or, even better, to leave the room to go somewhere. Moving a meter away from her friend, the blonde says that she doesn't mind being here. The guy just silently scratches the back of his head when Susan, standing between them, blinks her eyes in surprise. Stepping on the cold stone, the lady walks a little further. She sees Karshian's room for the first time, but this does not change anything, because the whole situation brings only gloomy thoughts that do not allow her to relax. Eyes widen, trying to accept reality. He is only 10 years old, then it is unclear how he can live in a place like this. It would be scary to be here even for a person who has lived for more than 30 years and is no longer a child. Latia knows her family and also knows their habits, but placing a boy in such a terrible place is above all. It seems that this was all done just to make it even worse for him. This doesn't seem normal. However, as the main character already knows, the Gladelies family will pay with their heads for the cruelty they showed to the Duke's son, who will soon arrive. Grabbing her neck, as if checking for the presence of her head, the girl sadly remembers that when this happened, her head flew along with the others after she learned about the betrayal. The young lady looks away directly at the boy who is standing very close. She lets Susan pass as she carefully places the plates on the table. Noticing such a gaze directly on himself, the guy, feeling that he can no longer stand it, folds his arms over his chest and asks what she needs and what is the reason for such gaze. Laughing, the blonde, clearly nervous, says that it's nothing, because everything is definitely in perfect order. You need to think about what to say in his presence and make it sound natural. One could say that the room is uncomfortable, but that is understandable. If you offer to remake it, you will end up with even more problems, especially since the Virgin does not have such powers. I want to cry because of hopelessness, especially since from the outside, my mental tossing is very noticeable. Something pulls me out of my thoughts that I manage to notice on the side, lying on the table. The eyes are interested in switching to a new target, realizing that this is extremely interesting. It is unclear what is written on it, but she immediately understands that it is Siren's paper. This species is extremely rare and expensive, so it is strange that it ended up in the hands of a boy. Noticing what the blonde is focused on, the brunette runs closer with the speed of light, snatches the letter to hide everything that is there. The companion freezes, not understanding what happened. The brunette's eyes sparkle, as if someone is forcing him to give out only negative energy. He grins and says that he forbids anyone to touch this thing. The guy seems on edge while the girl turns away, saying that she was just asking about it without meaning anything bad. She didn't even reach out to her, thereby not giving any reason. Still looking at the letter, the girl tries to remember the meaning of this thing. She had definitely read about it in a book, and it was nothing more than a gift from Claude Lomdesel before he left. As far as was known, the man had sold an expensive brooch to his mother, so the item must have been very valuable to Karshian, and this did not even mean money. Moving closer and trying to remain friendly, the blonde asks if a guy has taken advantage of her before. She understands that the answer is, of course, yes, but it's still worth asking. Without stopping, the girl asks if he can communicate with his father using this paper, thereby causing a strange reaction. Frowning his eyebrows, the young man asks how she knows about all this. Already starting to talk about something else, the girl realizes that everything has gone wrong. She freezes, trying to think through her further plan of action, because it seemed that it was impossible to even imagine anything worse. Anger at oneself is now a completely legitimate feeling. There was a mistake, and she just had to pretend that she didn't know anything so that Karshian himself would decide to confess. Looking rather nervous, Latia says that she recently saw the paper in local shopping catalogs. It was written there that with the help of Siren, you can contact those who are at sea the fastest. Still not relaxing, the brunette quietly says that this is true. It is impossible to guess this down to such small details, which means the blonde is not lying. This could be considered a clear victory in this matter. The young man sadly continues the conversation about the paper, suddenly mentioning the fact that over the past few months he has not been able to get a single answer, even if he understood that this could only happen if something bad happened. Anger rises again as the brunette says that perhaps someone is intercepting the letters before they reach him, to which the companion assures that it is not her. Susan, who has just been standing in the corner the whole time, just keeps hoping that these two won't fight. Thinking about all the words spoken, the blonde realizes that perhaps someone from Gladelise's house must definitely be involved in this. It would simply be unprofitable for them if the letters reached their addressees. Claude secretly handed over this paper as a last resort. Although he and the Marquis were close friends, He was probably worried because he could not be with his son for such a long time. A completely logical idea comes to mind. The girl says that no one took credit for his letters because they do not reach her father in the first place. Clarifying and hoping that this is not true and they get it, the guy asks why the lady is so confident in this, because any passerby who does not benefit from it can say so. It turns out that the magic potion used on paper loses its properties when the paper is stored in a damp place. It must be stored strictly in a drier place to achieve the desired effect. Feeling humiliated and embarrassed, the brunette turns away, quietly saying that he didn't even know that such a thing existed, because he was always sure that everything was fine, regardless of the conditions. If Karshan is a character in the book that we managed to read, then he did not write to his father until he was in this room. He didn't want to make the Duke worry about trifles, but then it was too late. His patience was like an endless cup, however. When he could no longer endure the beatings and terrible conditions, he decided to take this step. But by that time, the paper had already lost its magical properties. Lowering his head, the boy looks at his boots. The girl understands that he did nothing to deserve such an attitude, and she is very sorry that everything happened in exactly this way and did not end well. Thinking about how this can be fixed, the girl suddenly feels a blow to the head when a brilliant idea comes to mind. Perhaps she can help Karshan, thereby doing both sides a favor. In the end, the only goal is to gain his trust, which means this moment is a good and only chance. Nothing should be left out under any circumstances. First of all, it is worth relaxing the boy's vigilance. Now he looks like a little black kitten that hisses at everyone around him when Latia wants to feed him and tame him, taking him home and making him a pet. Coughing a little into her fist to attract attention and pull the guy out of his misery, the blonde talks about how he can still use the paper and send a letter to his father. Not everything is lost, which means you can check its performance. Raising her finger up in an instructive gesture, the Virgin says that all you have to do is dry the sheets carefully, and then, taking out the potion, apply it again to the paper, thereby giving it a second life. After this, he will have a much better chance.